Want to see more cool videos on our channel? We do, so press this bell and enable to send notifications.
The fear of flying is common to a large number of people. It's quite understandable, seeing as mere mortals we can't fly free like angels or birds. It's quite a hopeful procedure, getting into a huge machine that with all its weight is supposed to float on air and keep us safe. In most cases, almost 90% of the flights go smoothly, and the cruising ends up in passengers landing safely back on the ground. This is, however, not the case for all flights. Some have ended up in irrevocable situations that have ended in disaster. Let's look at some of the most earth-shattering incidents involving airplanes. Number 10. Planes parked at parking lots. These first cases involve planes that show up in places that have not been scheduled to be. How they end up in these locations is quite scary. In the middle of 2019, two Boeing 737 MAX clashes led to the whole class of aircraft being grounded just to keep future passengers safe. When you think about storage space for planes, it's just too ridiculous, since they're bulky and hangars are not that big nor that numerous. The owners of the planes have had to be a little creative and decided to put the planes in a regular car park in Washington. One plane was parked in a staff car parking and it ended up taking up the space of 36 cars. That's quite catastrophic, finding a massive plane parked in your spot. You can't easily call for the pilot of the plane to move it out of your parking space. Seeing these aircraft out of their original environment gives us a glimpse of how enormous they truly are. Boeing had to do this all over the world as it waited for the investigations to take their course. This is out of the ordinary, but it made for interesting photographs from all corners of the world. Number 9. Buffalo in a plane accident. As much as planes are beasts with great powers, they're also very delicate machines, and if struck by anything on the ground or the air, can turn into a major chaos. They can be rendered dysfunctional for weeks and can't get clearance to fly. You can imagine a plane hitting many things. I bet the last thing on your mind would be a Buffalo. In India, a Buffalo is what grounded a SpiceJet Boeing 737-800 in 2014. The plane was getting ready for takeoff at Surat when a random Buffalo met the plane on the runway. The pilot, whose game was on point, was able to put on the brakes hard and fast, and thanks to his speedy reaction, no single passenger was hurt. The plane, on the other hand, wasn't too lucky where all the impact was concerned. It could not attempt takeoff again, and all 146 passengers had to disembark and board another flight. While the passengers who witnessed this fiasco find it a little amusing, the CEO of SpiceJet was infuriated and pointed out that it was neglect to have a gap in the all-round perimeter that was big enough to allow a Buffalo to wander in. He was set to look into the incident with the security staff at the airport. Number 8. Formula 1 race car vs Airbus and Boeing. Not all the incidents here are catastrophes. Some of them are just out-of-this-world events that left us really wowed. Seeing is truly believing. In March 2018 in Qatar at the Hamad International Airport, there was a one-off race that saw Jerome de Baracchio's Formula 1 race car in a competition with two high-speed planes. The rules of the game were pretty simple. The car had to be ahead of the plane until the bird took off into the air. The first race was against an Airbus A350, which saw the plane win the race. It was a close call and the Formula 1 race car was almost winning, but as the plane got nearer to takeoff, the speed was faster and it clinched the number 1 title. The car was still intent on winning when it took on a Boeing 787 Dreamliner next. The plane and the car were neck and neck, and slowly the plane fell behind as the car won this second round. The race of cars versus planes ended in a draw. Number 7. The 30-year-old plane that became a hotel. Planes can't fly forever. They get to a place when they also have to hang their boots. When they retire, they're either turned into scrap metal or go into storage. The 30-year-old Boeing 767 is unlike most planes you've seen. A rich Irish businessman, David McGowan, was searching for such a plane to be his little fancy hotel at his camping venue. When he finally found the plane of his dreams, he had plans for it to be delivered to him even though the plane could not fly. After 30 years in the sky, the plane had run its course and no one would agree to give it a license. There then remained one way to get it to its new owner: by sea. This 50-ton machine was then strapped nicely into a massive barge once it had been lifted into position by a gigantic crane. Number 6. Passengers behaving badly. This flight cancellation was truly stranger than fiction. In 2018, a flight planned from Dubai to Amsterdam was already mid-flight when the pilot was called upon to end the flight early, leading to an emergency landing. Believe it or not, it was all because of an unexpected bout of flatulence on board. The person responsible for this unfortunate turn of events has never been named. The person in question was truly behaving badly when he repeatedly broke wind on the flight a few times. Two passengers next to him were infuriated by his annoying behavior, and the situation soon became very chaotic when a fistfight ensued. Without a doubt, a fistfight on a moving plane is a dire situation. When the cabin crew were overwhelmed by this turn of events, the flight had to stop abruptly in Vienna, Austria. The police were called in and 4 people were led away in handcuffs. We're yet to know if breaking wind on a plane is a criminal offence, but someone on that plane got what they deserved. Number 5. Planes and coffee spills. You'd immediately think that a plane with all the engineering that goes into its mechanics can survive a coffee spill. Turns out there are spaces in the plane's structure that cannot survive this small mishap. When a pilot spilled coffee inside the cockpit of an Airbus A330-243 that was jetting into Mexico in September 2019, the outcome was an emergency landing. How did it happen? Pilots can't be that butterfingered. The coffee was handed to the pilot without a lid. It splashed into the audio control panel, and seconds later smoke engulfed the cockpit, and this was enough for the pilot to instinctively decide that it was no longer safe to be in the air, hence bringing the plane to an emergency stop in Shannon Airport in Ireland. By the time the landing happened, the entire audio control panel was destroyed and communication for the pilot was dysfunctional. It's without a doubt that the cabin crew who caused the spill were in much more trouble than the pilot. The airline in question, Condor, were infuriated by the entire incident since it caused quite a lot of inconvenience to the 326 passengers. Number 4. Passengers held hostage by airline. In 2011, passengers aboard a Boeing 757 were all set for a cosy flight from Amritsar, India to Birmingham, England, until they found themselves held hostage and eventually robbed by the airline. When the plane was already in the air, Austrian airline Comtel Air is said to have gone bust and run out of money. When it made a pit stop as scheduled in Vienna, the 100 passengers were asked to pay $25,000 between them and buy fuel to continue with the rest of the journey. Failure to do so meant that all their luggage would be removed from the plane and they in turn would be stranded in Austria. A few passengers are said to have been escorted to ATMs to withdraw some cash. The plane did continue with the remainder of the journey, and this was after some of the passengers wrote a couple of promissory notes as assurance that they would indeed pay the fare. On the ground, the situation became different when the same passengers refused to honour their deals, stating that they'd only agreed to the arrangement because they were under pressure. The entire matter ended in the hands of the police. Number 3. Accidental landing. The tech behind aviation and planes is quite massive. That said, all it needs for a catastrophe to happen is unprecedented human error. In 2013, it's such human error that resulted in a Boeing 727 Dreamliner landing in a tiny airport in Kansas. This was 8 miles away from the set destination in Jabara Airport in Wichita. The pilot of the plane was a little confused as to the exact airport he was meant to land in. He was set to land in the McConnell Air Force Base, but the two airports had similar runways, and he accidentally chose the wrong place. Landing was a little easier, the same can't be said for trying to take off again, since the runway was 3,000 feet too short. It took almost 10 hours to manually maneuver the plane into a proper position so that it could take off successfully. In only 15 minutes, the plane was able to land in its correct destination. The sloppy explanation from the pilot was that he could not read his own handwriting, and this is what caused him to land in the wrong place. We doubt that explanation was satisfactory to his bosses. Number 2. Plane suicide mission. The idea is that when a plane is empty, it needs to be locked so that no random clown can get in and do any harm to themselves or others around. Believe it or not, someone sort of forgot to lock the passenger plane Horizon Air Q400 at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport in August 2018. This ended up in very dire consequences. A mechanic, Richard Russell, who was 29 years old and married but a little distressed and unhappy with his life, decided to get on the plane and indeed fly it. He was set to have a ball on his joyride. Fighter jets tried hard to intercept the plane and using air control tried to have him land the plane. Unfortunately, the mechanic did not have flight training and bringing the plane down was not possible. More so, he informed the air control that he had no plans of landing. After a couple of loops on air, he crash landed on a nearby island where the plane exploded into flames. The man lost his life and by chance no one else was on the island, so there were no more casualties. Number 1. Bees on board. This has to be the most unusual incident since it has to do with nature. If a swarm of bees were to get into the engine of a plane that was flying at an altitude, the plane would run the risk of not working while in the air. It's then with a little relief that 20,000 bees decided to make a Mango Airlines engine from Durban, South Africa, their abode. Luckily, the plane had not taken off. This grounded the plane for a couple of hours, and the airport called in help from bee specialists to convince the bees into leaving. The plane was on the runway for at least 3 hours before this anomaly was detected, meaning the swarm moved very speedily. The incident affected 3 other passenger flights from King Shaka International Airport that had to be delayed, while others were attending to the plane that was stationary at the runway. This story has quite the happy ending. The bees were all safely removed by the bee specialist without harming anyone. They were taken in by a local beekeeper who took it upon himself to relocate them to suitable homes and farms within the region. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please let me know by clicking the like button. Do share, write a comment, and don't forget to subscribe so you can catch up my next video.